morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good morning, Elias.
Morning.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
Are you ready?
Always ready, but I have to say it's going to be very difficult to entertain the presence here after Sir Peter Cook.
Yeah,
it was a lovely presentation.
Good, so thank you so much for being with us, and thank you everyone for joining us today. So we're talking about Saudi Arabia, and the vast lands of Saudi Arabia are being reshaped. Not by wind and not by time, but rather by the perpetual hum of construction. With an expected market size of almost $70 billion in 2024 and a growth rate of 8%, the kingdom's real estate market is a red-hot engine propelling the country's economic diversification. So beneath the towering cranes and the construction sites, there are so many questions that we need to address and people are interested to know about, such as how can investors align themselves with the Vision 2030 goals? What are the boundaries and possibilities that the stakeholders are facing in the market? And today with Elias, I think he has some pretty nice insights to share with us. I'm going to be asking him some questions about that.
Please.
All right. So my first question is, Vision 2030 is a transformative economic diversification plan. We all know that, we all write about that, and we all read about that, which prioritize giga projects and infrastructure development. A recent report by JLL, which they are also here with us, highlighted that there is a staggering $1.5 trillion in the pipeline of unawarded projects in the kingdom. So what kind of opportunities do you think this would create to companies who are operating in the market and who wants to invest or investing in this market?
So it will be good to segment this 1.5 trillion to understand the landscape of opportunities in the market. Out of the 1.5 trillion, I believe 80 to 90 billion have already been awarded, and I believe you referred to that figure in your intro. So that means there's 15 times growth in terms of projects to be done over the next 7, 8, maybe 10 years. We have to be honest to ourselves these days and acknowledge that mega projects take time and face issues. And it's not a secret that things could be stretched. So the relevance of these figures is to give the magnitude of scale. Will the Saudi government invest the balance between 80 billion and 1.5 trillion over the next few years? We know that this is not the case, but we can see traction from foreign direct investments. We are already seeing lots of traction from regional investors, and we believe it's a very healthy sign because this will drive the foreign direct investment from the west, from the east. Because obviously, the regional investors know more about the highways and byways of investing in Saudi, and that would have a ripple effect. So the opportunities are in the beginning of its transformation from your typical infrastructure to superstructure and to more operational activities. And I believe the plethora of opportunities will grow very quickly going forward, given that most of the infrastructure works are well underway. I believe for the crowd we have today, this is very good news because I can see from the brands, they're more into construction, lifestyle, tourism, interior design, and I believe it's just picking up.
So you think the sheer volume of having so much opportunities in the market is enough to attract international investors to the market?
Definitely. So in the 5 years that passed, or let me say the 4 years post-COVID, we've seen good traction on PPPs. With private-public partnerships, you have guaranteed offtake. So most of the investments that came into the country were based on private-public partnership. In the next phase, I think it's going to be more arm's length, free-hand type of investment.
This was actually my next question, about the PPP itself. We all know that partnership, especially between the private and the public sector, has emerged to be a successful model for infrastructure in various countries. And I think the kingdom is not anywhere different than the case. Exactly. So how do you think PPP can be leveraged to foster, the long-term development of the kingdom's real estate sector? And in your experience, what do you think are the key success factors for effective PPPs in this context?
We classify PPPs in Saudi today as structured and unstructured. It's a definition that I came up with, but it helps me understand the landscape of opportunities. Under structured PPPs, we refer to all the projects that go under the National Center for Privatization. And this resembles any PPP that you would face in any country. Very strict, very organized. You get an RFP that is 500 pages, you have to get a consortium, whether it's in power, utilities, any type of infrastructure. And I believe this is not very relevant to our discussion today. Where the unstructured PPPs come is through the mega projects, because these are not driven through the National Center for Privatization. Some might argue that these are not strictly PPPs. They're joint ventures between a public entity or a quasi-governmental entity and a private entity. But they follow the spirit of a PPP. We can talk of the housing, labor or staff housing projects we saw in projects like Neon or Red Sea. We can speak of joint ventures where King Salman Park are contributing land into funds and local and regional investors are investing in those funds. Also the National Housing Company, Roshan, there are more than 15 PIF-driven or other separate entities that are putting projects on the market today.
Okay. Now, again, you mentioned that usually now the structure is public-private. We aim to have more private companies going into the market alone without the government backing. There are so many issues there, and there are so many opportunities as well. So the government needs to, again, implement so many legislations and rules to encourage those investors to come into the market. And it has actually. The government of Saudi Arabia has recently enacted new legislations with this regard in order to bolster and to develop the sector. These include the Premium Residency Program. These include the new system for selling and leasing off-plan real estate projects. Among these initiatives, which ones do you think holds the most potential for attracting large-scale institutional investments or companies into the market? And what do you think other initiatives that could be potentially implemented going forward?
Let me start with the most tangible initiative we're witnessing today. It's the headquarters group. Every time I check the figures, I see that the count is increasing. So my last check was 225 companies, regional headquarters moving to Riyadh. I believe if we check today, it might be 240 or 250.
Actually, it was today one of the consultancy firms opened the regional HQ.
Great.
We're going to write about it in our news.
So there you go. And this is driving demand and unlocking value. So I gave this example to show that it's not just about issuing regulations. It's about connecting the dots, unlocking value. And it's amazing how the leadership, be it the government, the ministries, the quasi-governmental companies, they're acknowledging the importance of interdisciplinary development and connecting the initiatives to each other. Every time we think there's a missing link, after a few weeks or a few months, you find that it's been thought of. Every time I hear a consultant criticizing one aspect, less than 3-4 months, you see that it's happening. So here I'm referring to the dynamism.
There's proactivity.
Yes.
Between what's needed and what's actually being implemented.
I think it's a real renaissance. That's why I trust what's happening. Although it sounds sometimes over-ambitious, but then when you backtrack and you see what we have achieved in the last 3, 4, 5 years, you see that it's moving in the right direction. Again, roadblocks are there, headwinds are there, regional geopolitics. This is all a fact of life. It's how you deal with it. Now, if we go into some of the initiatives that you listed.
Let's focus a little bit on the residency program, because there are so many people that are asking you and are asking me and are asking everyone about this. And how is actually this being implemented? Are there any ambiguities in the law? And will this actually affect the residential real estate market in Saudi Arabia? Because this is where we are, this is why we're here.
And again, it will have a ripple effect
exactly.
on other segments of the industry, obviously. But primarily demand is still local. And this is good news, because it's less affected by regional and international headwinds. But recently we're seeing lots of demand from expats that are residents in Saudi Arabia. I've launched the project since the beginning of this year. Almost 15% of the buyers are expats that are residents. Some of them have been residing in Saudi for 10 or more years, so they call it home. But until very recently, they were not in a position to acquire.
Actually buy a house. And excuse me, I'm gonna stop you here. Do you have any data on their nationalities? Are they Arabs living in Saudis? Are they Europeans, Americans?
Arabs come in the first place, obviously, followed by Southeast Asian. We see a bit of Europeans, a bit of Australians, but mostly Arab and Southeast Asians. Because the typology and the products that are more suitable for the Western expat are yet to be seen under projects like the Reina. It's more community driven. And this brings me to the other chapter of this discussion, premium residency or foreign ownership as a whole. This has not kicked off at the pace that we want to. We think it will happen soon. My take on this is that the decision makers are always balancing between the home ownership agenda and foreign ownership. So today it's very hard to find vacant properties in Riyadh. I think by the time the regulations are there, the systems are there, by the time some of these mega projects come closer to going on the market, you would see a bigger push on the premium residency and the foreign ownership.
Okay, all right. I think running out of time. So there is an interesting topic that we spoke about before, and it was on the agenda, but I would really like to talk about it. It's about, so there's a recent report by CBRE, which indicates that the surge in demand for residential properties in Saudi Arabia, particularly for apartments and not for houses or villas. There's a growth and which coincides with the growth in lending in this particular sector up to 9%. So it's an increase of 9%. And this is mainly driven by expatriates. We also couple this with SAMA, Central Bank of Saudi Arabia, lending practices. So there's a 90% loan to value cap for Saudis. And for expatriates, it can go a little bit down from 70 to 80. The most recent numbers for expatriates, 70, 80. So there's a demand for expats growing, and there's, lending is also growing. So there is the traditional lending, which is mortgages given by banks. What other financial opportunities or alternative financial opportunities, financing opportunities, can people who want to buy houses in Saudi Arabia explore?
I have to say it's very difficult to compare the mortgage industry in Saudi to any other market for a simple reason. We're having a catch-up on lost years where the mortgage was very low. Today, we're seeing the contribution of the mortgage industry as a percentage of the total loan portfolio. It's coming at par with the international levels, 25, 26, 27%. This is very healthy, but there's lots of demand coming up, and you need to fuel this demand by more mortgage growth. that is why the Ministry of Housing has established the Saudi Refinancing Company. I think it's been rebranded to Daman, now or Damanat. And they are looking at securitizing and placing those mortgage portfolios abroad. We're creating the Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae of Saudi Arabia.
Interesting, interesting. Do you think this is happening anytime soon or maybe after 2030?
I think there were few transactions that started and it's going to roll out.
All right. And most probably we're expecting those mortgages, subsidized mortgages, let's say, to be sold internally in the kingdom and then for international investors.
Both actually.
Okay.
They're getting syndicated. I think it was starting to move at a fast pace, and then the interest rates went high and it became less competitive to place these in international markets. But this is creating liquidity in the market, and this gives us assurance that the mortgage industry will continue to fuel the housing industry. I can speak of alternative strategies by the National Housing Company. Even Roshan under PIF is using the same strategy. So we're getting land with 5-year payment terms. So, you refer to the off-land sales authority, and they're doing great work as well. So we just won a project that's a couple billion riyals in value, but we could start with 150 million riyals of equity, and this is without debt. So we're decoupling from the debt markets because we know they're going to be turbulent for the next few years. And this is thanks to the initiatives that are set by the government.
All right. My last question. I can see so many people here ready to make businesses and partnerships and sign deals. Where do you think there is a gap? And where is the opportunity? What kind of deals can we see, expect being signed? I don't know if you know, but maybe you can share.
I think we're in the right place to have this discussion. Supply chain. We have lots of challenges in the supply chain. Localization is key. I know we're speaking to a crowd that's mostly, vendors and suppliers from all over the world. But my advice would be find ways to localize your products.
In the kingdom.
Yes.
And this is actually one of the targets of Saudi Arabia, is to localize a big part of the productions. If we were to advise people here, bring your stuff to Saudi and open your factories internally.
Yeah, you could, if you speak to the Minister of Investment, for instance, they will guide you to local manufacturers where you could do partnerships to do maybe not all the production lines, but some products that have a huge demand in Saudi. It makes sense for everyone.
Especially what we have seen recently with regard to the disruptions in the supply chain globally in the market. But I think we don't have enough time for another question. So thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure.
And thank you for listening.
Enjoy the rest of the